Hello Yele Nation, I hope you've been having a great day. So today I'm going to be teaching you how to make this nice shorts with the side flounce. Disclaimer, I have actually grown bigger than this. The shorts don't fit anymore, but still I can still make them for a client, right? So today I'm going to be showing you how to cut the pattern and how to stitch it together. And the first thing you need to know is how much fabric you need for this project. I would advise you to get about 1.5 yards depending on your size. Now, to know how much fabric you need to fold over in the first place, you need to calculate your hip measurements and then add extra 3.5 inches to it. So the hip measurement of the client that I'm using is 42 inches, and then I'm going to divide that into 4. That will be 10.5. I added extra 3.5 to it, so that will be a total of 14 inches. So the next thing that I'm going to do now is to know how long I want this short to be. My client said she wanted a 15.5 inches short. Now I'm going to remove 2 inches to account for the extra band I'm going to put on the short. That will give me 13.5 inches, and then I'm going to add 2 inches to fold it at the bottom, and then extra 0.5 inches for seam allowance. So that still brought me back to 15.5 inches. So instead of you stressing yourself to do all the math, just use the original length of the shorts that you want in the first place. So I'm just going to cut out that particular length out, and now I have my 15.5 inches thereabout length of my shorts. Now remember, I added 3.5 inches. Now 1 inch out of that 3.5 is to account for seam allowance, while the remaining 2.5 inches is to account for the crotch. So the first thing I'm measuring now is hip measurement divided by 4, and then I'm just going to rule it down. So that is the hip measurement divided by 4, but accounting for the extra 1 inch seam allowance that I added. So if my hip measurement was 10.5 and I added extra 1 inch, it's going to be 11.5, and now I'm removing that 1 inch, and so the middle portion is 10.5 inches. So after doing that, I'm going to then measure the length from waist to hip. Now the waist to hip is normally 9 inches. Remember, I'm moving 1.5 for seam allowance. That will be 7.5, and then I added extra 0.5 again for the seam allowance to join it to the band. So that landed me at 8 inches. So we have 8 inches, people. Now 8 inches for the length of my waist to hip, and then the next thing now is to calculate the length of my crotch. Now if you've watched any of my previous videos, you should know this formula by now. So the length of crotch is your hip measurement divided by 4, and then you add extra 1 inch to it. If you did not remember, you have failed my quiz for today. You are a bad student. You're supposed to shopkin. But let's move on. So the hip measurement that I'm using is 42 divided by 4, which is 10.5, and I added extra 1 inch to it. That gives us 11.5 inches, and I'm going to mark that on either sides of my fabric as you see me do, and I'm going to rule it as my crotch depth. Next thing is to take our waist circumference. Now on the that seam line, you go in by 0.5 inches, and then after going in by 0.5 inches, you are then going to account for your waist measurement. My waist measurement I'm using is 32 divided by 4, and that will give us 8 inches. So going in by that 0.5 will give a nice curve to your hip line, which will account for the curve of your waist to your hip. Now the next thing now is to check your hip measurements, but you already did the hip measurements earlier, so that box is exactly your hip measurement. And then we have our waist to hip line. I'm going to draw it like that, and then I'm going to draw it on the other side as well. You only have that curve because you went in by 0.5 inches at the top. Okay, so after drawing our line to that hip line from the waist, the next thing is to account for our crotch curve, which should be at least 2.5 inches away from the waist, from the hip circumference. So I'm just going to draw the curve as you are seeing me do, and then we have our curve right there. I'm going to sharpen it even some more so you can see the curved line right there. And then next thing is our lower thigh measurement. Now the lower thigh measurement, I'm just going to go in by 0.5 from my crotch curve and then draw a straight line down. But at the bottom, remember that you are going to account for the turning in. The turning in is about 1.5 inches allowance, so that That's exactly where the turning in is. So then I'm going to just draw my line to show where my turning in is. Now if you don't use a lining, you can just turn that part in normally, but I'm going to use a lining, so I don't really need to turn it right now, but I'm still going to account for that turning in space. Now I'm going to add all my seam allowance. I'm just going to add 0.75 inches seam allowance all around the side of my pants. So then I'm going to draw it with my curve ruler. So you see that I'm only adding it to one side, I'm not adding it to the other side of my pants. I'm just taking it straight from the hips all the way down on this side, but only from the waist to the hips is going to have the curve on that side. Now on the other side that I'm pointing at right now, we're going to have to go down by between 0.5 to 1 inches and then draw a sharp straight curve, a straight line all the way from your waist to that point. You don't have to cut that right now because we still require this pattern for our back pattern. So I'm just going to cut everything else except that part. Now for our back pattern, the thing we need to do is to add 3 inches to the crotch area, and then between 1.75 and 2 inches to every other part of the back pattern. So that curve part, the thighs part, I'm going to add 1.75 to 2 inches, but on the crotch part I'm just going to add an extension of 3 inches, and you can make it 3.5 if the person is a bigger size. Okay, so on the upper part I'm going to just go up by 1 inch to 1.5 inches, just like that, and I'm going to then draw the slant from that part all the way down to the end of my front pattern. Now I'm going to straighten that slant a little bit because that part is seam allowance, so it's not supposed to go all the way up. So I'm then going to join all my lines together, join the curve of my crotch also together, and then join the bottom to the thigh, the crotch to the thigh, I mean all the way down, and then make sure that I also still account for the M by making that part straight, by making the bottom part straight. You can see the way I made that bottom part straight, and then I curved it back into my crotch circle, crotch curve, just like that. So now we have our back pattern. We see the way everything is already aligned, and then I can then cut out my pattern. So I'm going to cut everything out like so, and then I'm going to open it up on the sides and the front part. Remember, I didn't cut out that front going down part, and I just cut it down now, so don't forget to cut yours. And then we're through with that pattern. The next thing now is to cut out our band. The band that I'm using is of course the waist circumference, and I'm using 2 inches. I'm cutting out 2 inches so that when I fold it into 2, I'll be able to have 0.5 inches as seam allowance, and the band itself will end up being 1 inch. So this is what we have, and then I'm folding it into 2 like this, and then this is what our back pattern is. Now to create more contouring at the top, I'm going to just draw this curve right here on both sides of my waistband. So that curve is going to help it such that it will have more fitting around the waist on both sides. So I put on the zipper side and also on the other side without the zipper. The next thing now is to cut out my pockets. I always use a pattern for the pocket, but this time around I want to show you how to cut it without having the pattern beforehand. So you need a box of 11 by 7 inches. So my fabric is folded into 4, and then I am cutting out 11 inches by 7 inches as I've seen me do. So on the edge of the box, you will see the points that I'm going to check. Then on that edge of the box, I'm going to just go up by 1.5 inches so that I can draw out a curve right here. You don't necessarily have to do it, it's just for aesthetic reasons, just to, because pockets always curvy, so we want to make it curvy. All right, so at the top on the other side also, I'm going to go in by 0.5 inches and then curve it just the way I did the side of my short. It's so that both of them can align and they can be exactly the same thing. So I'm separating all my pocket patterns together, and then I remove 2 out of it, so the remaining 2 is the opening for the pocket area. I'm going to measure 5 inches at that top and 5.5 inches at the bottom, and then I'm going to draw a curve to join both of them together like so. So that will be the opening for your pockets. I'm sure you have seen something like this before. And then we have this together. I'm going to show you how the pockets lay on top of each other. So this is how they lay on each other and for each side they lay like that. So this is usually the pattern that I use right here, but I don't want to just show you the pattern. I want to show you how to make the pattern if you don't already have the pattern for the pockets. But it's good to always have a pattern ahead of time, so you don't have to keep drawing the pockets all the time. That's the reason why I have the pattern. Okay, so I have all my pieces together, my pocket pieces together, and then I'm going to lay my pocket, the opened pockets, I'm going to lay it on my front pattern like you see me do, and then I'm going to use it to trace out the side of my front pattern like that, because then we are going to be able to create an opening to sew everything together, to sew the open pocket with the front pattern and then with the second part of the pocket. Moving on to our sewing machine, remember that I'm putting lining in this shirt, so I also cut out the lining off camera. You don't really need to see that. Just use the pattern for the front to do the back, and cut the lining like that. So okay, so now I have my two pieces, and then I'm going to take my pocket. The open part is going to go to the open part of the front pattern, as you are seeing me do. Just watch what I do and do as I do, and follow the following that you need to follow. So you see that the pocket is not laying as good as you want it to be, so you're going to notch the inside, the seam that you have created. You're going to notch the seam so it lays even flatter, and you see it lays even better than it was laying before. And then I'm going to take the closed part of the pocket and I'm going to place it on curved side to curved side. I think that's why we draw the curve, so we'll know which side is matching which side. So curved side to curved side, I'm going to just sew along the curve like that, and then we have our first pocket done, easy as ABC. You see it already done, and then I'm going to repeat that for the other side as well. Now after putting the pockets for the other side, I'm going to then sew on the crotch of my front pattern, and then I'm going to also sew on the crotch of my back pattern. Now, because I want the back pattern to have more fitting, I had to add that to it, just to let it have more fitting for the butt area. How you want your butt to be smooth at the back and very nice. So from the middle, I'm going to just go out by 4 inches, and then I'm going to sew a 6 to 7 inches dart on either sides of my back pattern. So what you need to do is to go out from the middle of your back pattern by 4 inches, then sew a 6 to 7 inches dart. Now I am joining all my lining pieces together. Like I said, this part is not important if you are not interested in putting lining in your shorts. You don't need to do this part, you can just skip this part. So I'm adding all the darts, and I'm sewing all the pieces together for the satin pieces, just like I did for the main Ankara fabric that I used before. So now we are moving on to the flap. This is the part that I'm most excited about, how to draw our flap. There are different ways to draw this flap. Like, you can't go wrong with it. I don't think you can go wrong with how to draw the flap, because the way I'm doing it now is even different from the way I did it for my own shorts, so you can't go wrong with it. So I first of all measure the length of my short. It landed about 15 inches, so I'm going to use that 15 inches length, and I'm going to go to my new fabric, measure 15 inches out, just like I'm doing, and then on this, and then I'm going to slant it down. But I'm going to first of all put my fabric the way I want the flounce to be, or the flap to be, and then from that after arranging it from that point, I'm then going to draw it down to the end of the flap like you are seeing me do, and then there's going to be a nice curve. So this is what I have for my flap. You cannot go wrong with this flap. Anyhow the inspiration comes to you, just do your flap, make your flap. Is going to be beautiful all the same. I give you creative freedom to do whatever you want to do. So after doing that, I'm going to then cut the lining for my flap as well, and then after cutting it out, it's time I'm going to then sew it the way you see me do, so that I can turn it out to the clean side, so right side to right side, and then sew it all the way around. The part that you are going to use to turn it out is the part that you are going to sew on to your shorts. Ladies and gentlemen, let me present to you Smooth Operator. That's the name of my ironing board, which I just recently got. Now after ironing the flap, you see the way it looks. This is how we want it to lay, and then I'm going to sew it to the side of my shorts. And then after sewing to the side of my short, I'm going to take the back pattern and put it on the side of my short and then sew it down again. And then I'm also going to sew the other side of my short, leaving about 7 inches for my zipper allowance. And then I'm going to sew the bottom part of my short, and here we have it. Our short is really coming together and it's looking really nice. And I already sewed also the pieces of the lining. Now this part is very interesting. To turn your fabric or to turn your short with lining, you first of all make sure that you put the seam of the main fabric with the seam of the lining, pinch it together, and then take it, put your hand inside the short and bring out the pinched parts. It's going to come out on the as the wrong side. So when you bring it out at the wrong side, you can pin it down so it doesn't slip away from your hands, and then you sew. So sew as much as you can and sew all the way round about it. Once you sew all the way round about it, it's going to be fine. It's going to come out clean on the other side of your sewing, and you're going to repeat this for both sides of your shorts. Now after that is to put in my waistband. Now remember the curve that I drew on my waistband, and I'm going to sew on that curve right now so that the waistband will have a lot of fitting. Then after doing that, I'm going to take it to the ironing board and iron it again. Now after ironing it, I put a little bit of like stay on one side of it just to stiffen it a little bit. The fabric doesn't really need much stiffening, that's why I put on only one side. Now I'm going to take my band, open it up like this, and sew it Ankara to Ankara first. That is, you're going to sew the cotton or the colorful to the colorful first. Sew the band all the way around, only on the colorful part. Don't sew it on the lining part. But if you are not using lining, you can sew it to both sides. It's up to you. And then after sewing that, I'm then going to take the other side of the band and then sew that side to the satin part. And then I'm going to sew it right side to right side and sew it all the way round about it. By the time I finish sewing it, you're going to understand what we mean by what we are doing and why we are doing what we are doing. So after sewing it all the way around, I'm going to have a clean inside. You see, let me turn it inside out for you to see. I'm going to have a very clean inside, and my pants are almost ready. And then the next thing is what? Zipper. Now it's time for us to attach the zipper to the shorts. So here I am notching the middle parts so I will know exactly where to place my zipper. So I'm going to get my zipper now, open it up. I want to apologize in advance. I didn't know my phone was not recording, but some parts of me installing this zipper were gone. My village people at work, they think they are succeeding, but no, God is bigger than them. So some parts of me fixing this zipper went because my phone memory is full. I need a new phone. But anyway, you see the way I'm trying to fix the zipper. So I just take it right side to right side, fold it like that, and I place it on one of the Ankara part, and then I'm going to sew it all the way down and then repeat it for the other side as well. I hope you get the drift. I hope you get the points. At some point around this point, my phone stopped recording. I'm sorry. So by the time I realized it, I already finished fixing the zipper, and you can see the way it was fixed. Everything was clean and chum and really nice. And if you have any question for me, please ask me in the comment section. Now this remaining part was this space was where I used to turn the entire shorts inside out. So I'm going to use needle and thread to sew that part down to make everything look clean and nice. So I'm turning inside out now to show you how clean it is with lining. Like I said, you don't have to put lining. It is not necessary for you to put lining in your shorts, but to have that clean, nice look, you can put lining. Thank you so very much for watching today. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to share to your loved ones that really need this information. Till I see you next time, take care and bye.